I'd like to call a budget hearings to order, 2018-19 budget review and hearing. At this time, I'd like to ask Councilman Pat Lewis to lead us in prayer and Councilman Bruce Conk to lead us in the pledge.
We, the members of the Lafayette Consolidated Council, beg of Thee, Almighty God, to enlighten our minds so that our work will be just and fair in all things. Give us the courage and strength to fulfill our duties according to the laws of the land, and in so doing fulfilling also Thy holy will on earth and in heaven, through Christ our Lord. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Councilman Lewis. Thank you, Councilman Conk. Appreciate it. All right. Welcome everyone here, and this is the first time I do this budget as finance chair, so be patient with me. The rest of us on the side here are the pros. So let's get started. We welcome you to today's budget review. This meeting is a departmental budget review session. If you wish to address the council, a green sheet would be filled out and given to the council clerk, Ms. Veronica Williams, who is seated to my left. I am requesting that the first row to my left be used for media only, and the right side of the auditorium be reserved for the budget and finance staff. I'm also requesting that anyone who approaches the podium please state their name and title for the official record. Lastly, food and drinks are not allowed in the auditorium, and all cell phones and electronic devices shall be silenced from this point forward. This meeting is to address matters related only to the proposed budget document. Please, we request that all other matters specific to city parish government business be directed to the administration and that it not be addressed at this public forum. This budget document has been posted on the website at www.lafayettela.gov under Finance. Public comment will be held immediately following each budget review on matters related to that specific department's budget. All members are reminded that there are three possible actions that could be taken during the hearings. A council member may propose changing the budget by offering one of the following. One, a general amendment when the entire council agrees on a proposed amendment. Two, a separate amendment when a council member objects to a budget change. Or a council member may also choose to mark an item for wrap-up discussion, which will allow more time to receive additional information. You also may make a request for information from the director, the agency, or the head. Following your review of the information, you may choose to come back later to perform one of the three options. So you can come back later if you needed to make a general amendment, separate amendment. Please note, council members, Liz Abear is unable to attend today's meeting review, and I think I was told Mr. Annette Cook would try to be here. She's actually teaching, so she'll be here when we can. Any council announcements at this time related to the budget? Seeing none. Moving to budget items by department. At this time, I'd like to ask the Mayor President or Ms. Lori Toops for opening comments or remarks.
And Laurie, before you get started, I want the council members to know that in your packet on the dais, you should have the items, the budget items that are $500,000 plus with an explanation relative to today's departmental budget hearings, the departments for today.
Okay, thank you, V. All right, Ms. Laurie, administration, got anything?
I don't have any general comments. We're ready to roll right into Parks and Rec.
That's how I like it. All right. First department up is Parks and Recreation, and we'll begin on page 187. At this time, we'd like to call up Parks and Recreation Director, Mr. Gerald Boudreau.
Before Mr. Boudreau speaks, I'd like to give you a summary of the department and give you a chart on where the department's revenues come from.
Sure.
Those. Okay, the department's operating expenses, this does not include capital, and this is the Department of Parks and Recreation, including the golf courses has a total budget of $10.4 million. 10 years ago, they had a staff of 120 people. In this proposed budget, there are no budget changes in personnel. They are budgeting 116 people. Their revenues start on page 80 in your budget book, and you could look at that. This chart here reflects where the funding sources come from. I have two charts, one for golf courses and one for parks and recreation. The operating budget just for parks and recreation, excluding golf and capital, is $7.3 million. 47% of that comes from the city general fund. 5% comes from the parish general fund, and you will see that on page 148. The Parks and Recreation Fund subsidy is allocated based on full-time equivalent personnel. You'll see that they have $2.8 million in dedicated city property tax that also goes to fund Parks and Recreation. The combined golf courses operating budget, this doesn't include $765,000 of capital, just the operating budget is $3 million. You will find their revenues starting on page 86, and that's Fund 209. The Recreation Fund is Fund 201. The combined golf courses is Fund 209. There is no city parish allocation in the combined golf courses fund. You will see on page 48 that 100% of the operating subsidy for the city golf courses comes from the city general fund, and that is proposed in this budget at $666,510. And that's 22% of the operating funds of the golf courses.
Okay. At this time, we'd like to go ahead and call up Mr. Gerald Boudreaux. How you doing?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Just before we get started, just wanted to recognize the staff that's here and ask them to stand. Our managers, Rakesha Thomas is our Departmental Budget Analyst. Noreen Lanner is our Departmental Secretary, Executive Secretary. Raul Hill is our Recreation Centers Manager. Greg Gocho is our Athletic Programs and Maintenance Manager. The three golf course managers, Wayne Wills is at Hebert Golf Course, Todd Robertson over at Lavo Shane's Golf Course, and David Gary at the Wetlands, and Thomas Shed is here also. He's the superintendent of the maintenance section at the Wetlands. We also have with us today one of the members of our City Parish Recreation Advisory Commission, Ms. Judy Placer, who's here. And thank her for her attendance today and her work on behalf of the commission. So I'll defer any comments until we go through everything, so we can
Okay.
basically go through.
All right, we'll get started on page 187. Council members, if you, top of 187, bottom of 187. Councilman Terrio?
If you don't mind, I'm sorry, Mr. Boudreaux. One request that I had from individuals, if you could let the public know how many under Parks and Recs, how many parks do we currently have under Parks and Recreation? What's that number?
The number is 35.
Okay.
35 parks and 10 recreation centers and activity centers, the tennis centers over at Beaver Park and Thomas Park, and then a number of other athletic complexes, but about 1,800 acres of park land within the department.
And of the 35, sir, how many of those are inside the city limits of Lafayette and how many are outside?
So that would, you would eliminate 7, all of the small towns, so you would have we used to refer to as the parish parks in Carencro, Broussard, Youngsville, Scott, Judy's, Dusson. I leave any out? That's at Youngsville?
Yes, sir.
Broussard, Youngsville, Picard Park over in Milton. And you said Scott, and then your other municipality is Carencro. Now, we also have Long Bridge or LeBlanc Park, which is off of the Burbridge Highway, which is outside of the corporate limits of the city.
And that would total, what was it, 7 or 8 of them?
Well, you actually get to 9.
9?
Yeah, a total of 9.
So 35 minus 9 then. So you're looking at 26 inside the city limits.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Castillo? You had to hit your button. Okay. Councilman Gall?
Mr. Boudreau, speaking of operations outside the city of Lafayette, I sent you an email earlier. If you look at the website for the Vieux Golf Course, it's listed as being in Youngsville, and I asked if we could correct that because it was actually said on the news that there was an event going on at the golf course in Youngsville, and I would like to make it obvious that it's the city of Lafayette Golf Course, and it is within the city based on the maps.
That's correct, yeah. We got 2 lawsuits, and it's annexed into the city of Lafayette. I did receive that. What website was that on?
On the Vieux website, it shows the Youngsville address. Of course, that's based on the post office.
Okay, yeah,
But if just something to say, hey, we're in Lafayette,
yeah.
okay?
The revenues come to Lafayette, I can assure you of that.
That's the only important part.
But we'll address it.
In fact, if you look at the bottom on the website, it says Vieux Golf Course, Youngsville, Louisiana. Just a correction on that, if you would,
Thank
please.
you. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
Take credit for what we can.
That's it. That's it. Okay, just a reminder, we on 187. Are any more questions for 187? Seeing none, go to 188. Top of the page of 188. The bottom of 188. Okay. Not seeing anything on 188. Let's move to 189, page 189, top of the page of 189. Okay, 189. Anything on 189? Bottom of 189. All right. Moving to page 190. 190, top of 190. Okay. Bottom of 190, centers and other programs. Councilman Con.
I know if Ms. Cook was here, she'd ask, what is the status of our pickleball court?
Okay, yes, and Greg and Rikishi have handled a lot of the capital work, but we have an architect assigned, and we're in the design phases of that project over at Como Recreation Center, and I met with Council Lady Cook earlier this week to give her an update on the project. She'd informed me that she'd be in class and would miss this portion of it, so thanks for bringing it up, but it's in the design phases now, and so many of those projects that you all had assisted us with on last year, I know those, especially in your area at Oaklawn Park, those are all moving, and if we could get through the O&M, I'll ask Greg to give us an update on those, especially those that were added to the budget on last year for you a little later on, but thanks for bringing it up. Yes, sir.
Councilman Lewis.
Yes, Mr. Boudreau, I was hoping you can give me an update on the pavilion at the Ballon Park.
Yeah, I'll ask Greg to come up soon as we get through all the O&M.
Okay.
And, yeah, any specific projects, the Bayonne Park.
Yeah, if we
as
can
well
wait
as
till we
Oaklawn. Yeah,
get through everything,
Yeah.
then we'll have a chance to.
yeah, we'll give you a project update.
Okay.
Okay, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Still at the bottom of page 190. Seeing nothing. Let's move to page 191, top of page 191. Okay, now we'll go to the bottom of page 191, golf courses. Councilman Terrio.
Real quick, and maybe Ms. Toops, you might be the one that might be able to look at this. I think we are showing 3 golf courses. We have Muni Golf Course, you have Vieux-Chains, and the wetlands. Question posed to me currently, were all 3 golf courses profitable?
No, there is a subsidy in the combined golf course fund, as I presented in the pie chart,
Right, I did see that.
about 666.5. We can get you a breakdown by golf course. I don't have it broken down that way in the budget book, but we can certainly get that for you.
The question that was asked of me is, and I didn't know how to respond, is that which golf course is not making as much money as the other ones? Would you happen to know that, Mr. Boudreaux?
Well, we have a different tiers structure when it comes to the fees. So what we have is we have a golf course fund, so it's an enterprise fund where all three of them, the revenues, expenditures, all are combined. So we could break out and get the specific, but we don't chart them or single them out as, because in the instance of the wetlands, of course, they came on last. Their fee structure is higher than Abear and Vauchane, so generally they're going to generate more revenues, but there are also additional expenses that come along with that. So we can break it out for you by golf course, but for today, I don't have the breakdown.
Not a priority, just whenever you get a chance,
Sure.
if you don't mind. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Lewis.
Yes, Mr. Boudreaux, I noticed that on different accounts, I'm looking at these bank service charges.
What page? What page?
Oh, the page 192.
Okay. We on page,
Well, I'll wait a little further.
we on page 1. Let's wait till we get to page
Okay,
192.
what page you on right now? 191, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. You want to go to,
Well, I did see some before, but I'll wait till we get to 192.
okay, well, we can go to 192 because I
Yeah,
don't see
let's wait
anything here on
next page.
191. Page 192, everybody. All right, Mr. Lewis, you still got the floor?
Okay, at the top of the page, the bank service charges.
Yeah, so Laura them can chime in, but that's basically what we pay for the use of credit cards at our facilities. So what the bank in turn charges us for the third-party fee for allowing people to charge at the courses. We also have it in the recreation centers where people can pay with the credit card. So that's just a charge that the bank passes through to us as the vendor. Pretty much accurate.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything on top of page 192, moving down to the bottom of page 192? Seeing nothing, let's move to page 193. Page 193. Okay, 193, bottom of 193. I have a question. The bottom of 193, uninsured losses.
Yes, sir.
Are we just budgeting more for that, or our insurance went up, or we need?
No, that's uninsured losses. What we do is we pay the uninsured loss claims out of the uninsured losses fund. Any claim under $100,000, we process through risk management and through our attorney, Paul Escott, and we accumulate those in the risk management fund. And then the following year, in order to get the money back to the risk management fund, we bill the department. So that would be actual losses in the department that were accumulated from the prior year. And also during the year, we also come to you with a budget amendment. If you haven't gotten this year's, it is in the works.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll shore it up the
Okay.
following year. So you don't have excess funds in that account, we'll clean it up the following year.
Okay.
Anytime that we have a claim over $100,000 and it's approved by the council, then it's directly billed to the department that year.
That year, okay. All right, thank you for the clarification. All right, 193 going once, twice. All right, move to 194, page 194. 194. All right, seeing none, at this time, we'll now move to the 5-year capital for Parks and Recreation, and we will begin on page 261. 261 at the bottom, Recreation Parks Project.
So, Mr. Chair, if, this would be the time if there, I mean, as you go page by page, but if there are any questions from any ongoing projects, we can address those at this time also.
That's perfect. Okay. Councilman Conk, 261.
Just a quick follow-up on my earlier request for the changing of the webpage. Kudos to Citra Wingirder. She's corrected one of two and is working on the second.
I just got it, also, I was going to mention.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just asking, you shall
Anything
receive.
on 261?
From Recreation.
Okay, 262. Again, this is the 5-year capital outlay for Parks and Recreation. Do you have anything, Mr. Gerald, that you want to update us on while we're on
Well, I think,
projects, or is it
yeah,
Mr.
I
Lewis?
think those two projects, we can provide that if anyone else had any other questions, but routinely, I mean, they're all in motion. But Greg can highlight the pickleball court as well as the Oak Lawn Park project and the DeBayon Park coverage.
Yeah. With the big pickleball court, actually, we divided that project into 2 stages. We're doing some tennis court improvements, and we're combining the pickleball court with the tennis court improvements so we get a better price. And that work has already begun. So they're going to overlay the pickleball courts out at Boyer Park. You'll have a good surface, just like it would be a tennis surface. And then the second phase is going to be the lighting. And the lighting is under design right now. And once we have the design completed, of course, we'll bid the lighting package out and with the other amenities at the pickleball court. So the court will be finished, the surface will be finished prior to the lighting. But that's an update on the pickleball.
I got a question.
One more thing, Mr. Chair. When
Can
you
you
come,
state your name?
Greg
for the-
Gotro, Athletic Programs Maintenance Manager.
Thank you so much. Question. Played sports all my life. Follow a lot of sports. What is pickleball?
We're not sure. No. No, pickleball, it's a slower game than tennis. You use a wooden paddle along with a wiffle ball. The court's a little smaller than a tennis court. And actually, it's a big game for seniors, ages 50 and older. The league's really growing. We have a lot of people competing. I think Jay might like that, I know he's too...
I think Jay, Pat, and Bruce just signed up.
Yeah.
We had indoor.
And, yeah, we've had it was growing quite well, and we used our gyms, and we're still using our gyms to play in the evenings, but with the gyms and limitations of availability, we've also gone outside with it, and hopefully we'll have a third phase of the pickleball court at Boyer where we'll have a cover over it, depending on funding like everything else. But it's a growing game, it's very popular. It's, relatively new in some degree, but it's been around a while. Because I remember when I was teaching PE 30 years ago, I did teach pickleball in my classes.
That's awesome. I don't remember taking a test in PE about pickleball. But I'm
Never
glad
too
we
late
had-
to begin.
It's always good to offer things, That's all I had. Anything else, Mr. Pat? You had another project you asked about something earlier? Look, go ahead and hit the mic. Hit the button. All right, your mic's hot now. There you go.
Yes, please update on what's going on at the Ballon Park.
Yeah,
I think
at
you'll
the
talk
Bayon
about
Park,
the
we're
Bayon
building a large pavilion, one that we will have rentals on to increase income. And it's in design. We have an engineering firm that's designing it. It's almost final, the design. So that should probably go to purchasing for bid, a request bid date. I would think end of next month, end of September, we should have that completed. So hopefully we'll have it for this, for the summer, late spring of next year.
Yeah, that answered my question. I was wondering about when we can look at, some people could go and take advantage of it and use it. Okay, so somewhere around the summer of 2019?
That's correct.
Thank you.
And then Bruce, with the Oak Lawn Park in Chagua, I know you'd put some funds in it last year, and that's actually in design. We have an architect, an engineer designing that. We've met quite a few times, and that's almost ready to go out for bid at Chagua. As you're aware, we changed the priorities at Oak Lawn, and some of the work at Oak Lawn has begun and will continue, and we're going to use those funds from Oak Lawn for that project.
Okay. Councilman Terrio.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, we're on 262?
Yes, sir, 262.
Item number 137, the park improvements citywide, and you guys may have just touched on some of these things, guys, but here we're showing a budget of basically $491,000 for citywide park improvements with a balance, and let me stipulate, a balance at the end of April of 300 and almost 340,000. So that is monies that will need to be expended before the end of the fiscal. Was that some of the projects you guys were talking about with the council members part of those monies?
No, those are dedicated to those. When this category would bring in a whole nother, and so until we move to that point, those funds haven't been encumbered because we haven't decided on the exact design and layout. But that would include the 10 recreation centers, some improvements that are going on at those centers, as well as some general improvements at the other parks, which could be anywhere from, we have an emergency repair that's almost a year now at Girard Park for some erosion work. That would also include some replacement of outdated outdoor equipment. So while it shows that it's there, it's still in the budget, but there is some movement going on through Public Works and either architects or engineers. We just haven't gotten to the point in the process. But we have a breakdown of each project and what we estimate we will spend on it based on that figure.
Thank you so much. Ms. Toops, you wanted to add something?
Yes, according to our charter, the capital project the money can stay fixed for a period of 3 years
Right.
if it's not being used. If during those 3 years period it's being used, then it'll just keep carrying over. If ever it sits there and is no longer needed, we'll roll it back into fund balance. But also, as he said, that money is there available. Let's say that there is a piece of unsafe equipment or something that needs to be repaired on an emergency basis, but it's capital, then that money is available for that.
So, given that any one time or another, we're going to have some additional funds that are there in the event that something were to come up.
Hopefully, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and all of these projects, and there's a long list of them. The other thing is, until, we're trying to tackle them in priority, and until we get our arms around exactly what each cost is, because we won't be able to do all of those projects that have been identified for improvements, but that while it looks like a large sum of money there as we begin, as I said, with the 10 recreation centers, I mean, $400,000 doesn't go a long way, when you're talking about plumbing and the ADA requirements and all those other things. So it's a step-by-step approach, and Public Works is on board with us in making sure that the planning, and so we don't send something out to bid that comes back twice that cost.
Okay, very good. And one final thing I'll let you know. The pickleball courts y'all mentioned, is that indoor or outdoor?
These will be they'll be outdoors at Como. Those are the ones Council Lady Cook added last year. They'll be outdoors, and as Greg alluded to, they'll also have lights in that next phase.
Thank you much, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I have a question on 262. There's no line item. I guess I'm going to ask the question. In regards to Judy's Park, didn't we just do a big basketball court, cement, is there any plans in the future to cover that area?
On page 262, that is the city sales tax capital fund. So if that park is not in the city limits, then it wouldn't be listed here and may possibly be listed elsewhere.
Okay. Do you know if it is listed somewhere?
Well,
And if
okay.
it's not, I'm just asking a question to the director.
There are no funds allocated for anything else other than what we have there at Judy's at this point.
Okay,
There's not a line item in the budget.
I
to
got you.
support that.
And I guess just for future, not wrap up or anything, but can we look and see what that cost is so myself and the rest of the council or Councilman Bellard can look and see what type of cost that would be to help that area out, and then we can always address the funding later. But I'd like to get some type of, put it on the list to look at and see what that cost is to protect that area. Because it looks great, it's just open, and a lot of times when it's raining, the game gets interrupted, and then if there's a way that pickleball can come to that area, you have access there, so.
Now that you know what pickleball is.
Now that I know
yeah,
what it
now that
is,
you know, it'd be nice for them
You
to
know,
come. Yeah, sure.
it'd be nice for that area so we can have pickleball, you know.
Yeah.
I can.
Have a council tournament among the council members, it's all good.
It looks like we missed a page number in that list of pages. On page 255 does list Parish Parks and Recreation Capital Improvements. There's just one general line item
I
that would
missed
be
that
new
page, or
money.
you missed that page? Who missed the page?
We must have missed it when we provided the page numbers. I'm sorry.
No, I thought I messed up.
No,
Okay.
you did not.
All right, so it's page 255?
Page 255, down at the bottom of the page, it shows parish recreation improvements, and there is a general line item for park improvements parish-wide, plus you'll see other balances that were carried over from previous years.
So is there some money for something? I'm seeing 229,000 proposed, but no projects listed.
That's not our money. I would love to have it, but
It's still under
Yeah.
department. I was about to say that's more money than what we have in the fund balance.
Exactly. This is money from the Create millage. Sorry about that.
So there's not a line item for Creed? That money needs to be in Creed, is what you're telling me?
It is, part of Create is recreation, so that's why it's listed under recreation.
What?
This is the first year we had that, and so perhaps I will list it separately in the final adopted budget book. Sorry about that. It was new and got stuck in there. But it is for park improvements as a function under Create.
And it's falling under Parks and Rec, and it's parish-wide?
It's recreation, it is parish-wide, but it probably should have been listed under Create rather than Parks and Recreation.
So you're saying I can't touch the money is what you're telling me, because it should belong to Creed?
You could propose whatever amendments you like. But it probably will be better handled when we do the Create Fund and not when we do the Parks and Rec. Sorry about that. So we didn't miss a page.
Okay.
We're going to make sure that page number is given to you at a later budget date. Sorry.
Okay. I'm gonna let some others got some questions.
It'll be
on it.
under the President's office. When we do the President's office,
Oh, you
it'll be
can
listed under
leave it
there.
in parish parks, that's a good deal.
It's for recreation, I promise you.
Okay. Councilman Bellard.
So we can move it from the president's office back to recreation, is what you're saying? We just have to wait to that date. Can you get
Yeah,
Mr.
sure.
Robidoux mic high?
Absolutely.
You can't move it
Hot,
to
sir.
the recreation funds, but you can dictate how it's
improvements.
used for recreation.
Well, pickleball and a roof over the cement and Judy's and some park that's recreation.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk about this because the recreation component of Create is a big component. And again, the intention of Create has always been to strategically invest that money in areas that will help build our cultural economy, of which recreation is a component of that. My sense is that I wouldn't think it would be very strategic to spend that money on general repairs that are needed, lights and things like that. I think Parks and Rec's budget should take care of that. But if there is an investment that can be made with that money, whether that's annually at the level that we've identified, whether that's going to the bond market and saying we've got a much bigger project that we think is going to draw visitors here, that's going to create an economy or enhance an existing economy around recreation, then I think that's money well spent. So I think it's a healthy conversation to have. Just know that it is allocated at the 250 level. Was it 250, 225? I don't remember. Some 200 plus. And that I did feel like recreation was one of the largest components of the CREATE initiative. And I would just ask that we have that debate in a strategic way on what's the best use of that money over the course of the next several years that we're going to collect. So with that, you can see that it's not spent in the budget that we submitted to you. And so I think it's good that we made the mistake, and so it got brought up, and so we can have that conversation while the Parks and Rec folks are here. There's plenty things to spend it on, as is obvious in any conversation that we have. I would just ask that we have a really smart conversation about it and put it where it's going to have the largest impact on our economy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Boudreau, if you can with, and obviously I don't know if he plans on using all of that for recreation, but maybe you can come up with a plan for some of it, because I think it is a parish millage, correct?
Yes, parish-wide.
To where some of them, at the recommendation not of this body, but of your staff, of where some of that money can be used in the unincorporated area and in the city area too, but some type of maybe a little standardized list of that you can see this happening, where we can use that money, but then it'd be coming from your department, your direction, and we can see where it goes from there, since it's this parish-wide money. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Castillo.
Thank you, sir. So, no identified projects for this line item. It's part of CREATE, so we're gonna let it float. That's the intent, is to let it float until we can come up with something.
This is the first year, so this budget process, if there's something that the council agrees on is, hey, this is a really good use of the money, we think it'll enhance some portion of the economy in this way, and the council agrees, then I would say we spend it. If the council thinks that, well, it makes more sense to, let's really look at, in conjunction with what Parks and Rec recommends, that bonding that money out somehow, doing something, and I'm just making this up, something as it relates to engaging the Vermilion River is a recreational use that makes more sense, but that will need several years of this money in order to pay for that, then that's obviously a conversation I'm open to having. All I'll, again, restate is that I just want to be really smart about what we use the money for and what it's going to do to enhance the cultural economy.
And
But it is available.
I might add, by putting it in capital, if it's desired to use it for some other purpose other than capital, it has to come back before the council to be moved out of that.
Okay, when do you plan on having these discussions that you want to, start to use? I mean, this is a lot of parish dollars, 230,000, and we a little short on funds. So how soon you plan on having that discussion with council members or Parks and Rec and other people? I mean, can you give us an idea of how this is going to evolve?
I was assuming it was going to start during this budget process. And so, again, it's a lot of parish money, but again, it's, we have it in recreation. And so, it's available if the council decides to spend it. In this budget on some, we supplement the budget with the city general fund significantly, and so I don't want to just relieve necessarily the city general fund of $200 and whatever thousand. I don't think that's a good use of the money. I think this money is intended to be invested in something that we think is going to provide some enhancements. And by way of example, the BMX folks, the national folks, have decided to come and build a BMX bicycle track here at one of the parks, and which is great. And so they've raised money and they've got that done, and I know that that they're going to host tournaments and they're going to bring folks in from all over because Lafayette didn't have a BMX track. That would be an example if we were going to invest some money to put bleachers, to do something to enhance that facility, to make it more attractive to to get some national tournaments here, then that would make sense. But again, I would say the conversation starts today on the best use of that money. And whether we float it and leave it alone and let it build up to be able to do something that's more impactful, then that's great. If we identify some really smart uses of it, recreational, then that's great too.
And it will come up again listed under the mayor president's when we do his budget. It's listed under there.
All right, well, I guess you'll know why it raised the eyebrow, so it's.
I apologize.
Well, no, I think that's good.
Don't apologize.
It's good. No.
It's better we know about it, we
yeah.
have the discussion, because,
Well, and it would have been under the mayor's president's. I thought it was under recreation. We put it on the wrong class on
Well,
that
I
page.
suggest we start having those conversations soon, if you don't mind. I'd like to be included in some of that, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
But the other two items are recreation items, the first and the last, number 82 and number 84. That is recreation money. There's no new money being added to that, but there is balances available to be carried over.
okay. Councilman Cole?
This create property tax is parish-wide, correct? It can be applied anywhere in the parish, correct? The question I would have, and I would like to have some details at the appropriate time, is that a total of $545,792 is in that fund, of which what we're discussing is only $229,600. There are some other monies in there, for example, contractual services at $250,000. I'd like to have more detail as to where are those monies being allocated and how.
That's under his budget.
At the
yes, sir.
appropriate time.
Your mic's on, sir.
Thank you. And I don't even know what day we're doing our budget, but that conversation is all going to be had when we go over the executive budget, because that's part of the executive budget. And but I will tell you now, we have not spoken for any of that money. We have a consultant that is providing us with a best practice use for cultural economy and what we need, the things that we need to consider. And we have not gotten the final draft of that yet. And once we have that, then we'll start having conversations about the best way to invest that money.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Terrio?
Ms. Toops, thank you for that mistake.
Yeah, it was just like that. I gave him $200,000, and in a heartbeat, I took it away, so.
Thank you.
No, I'll call it an accident. But a follow-up question, do we have any other create funds that are tied to capital improvements?
No, that
Anywhere
was
else in the budget?
That was the only piece.
So nowhere else in capital do we have any create funds?
No.
That'll be listed.
We will double-check that for you, but we're all sure.
Okay, thank you so much. That's all I have for now.
Councilman Boudreaux? Kenneth Boudreaux, that is.
There's only one Councilman Boudreaux anyway. So Lori, Mr. Terrio asked the question almost like I was going to ask it, but he specifically identified capital. There's this line item in recreation. Is there any other area of the budget? Obviously, you said the president's office. Is there any other area of the budget where create funds will appear? And if so, how are they identified? This is obviously like, it sounds like this is the recreation component. This is the aura of create. Is there area, is the culture going to be under community development? Is the entertainment, the educate, is there anywhere else?
It's all under the mayor's office,
Okay.
and nobody, it's not spread, throughout. It's in that section as far as the page-by-page detail. We break out other things in these capital pages. Is that a zero up there? Oh, There is other than being under the mayor's office, is $181 that is listed in the general accounts, and that's because for all property taxes, we have to take a little piece and pay for the assessor's mapping system. And we spread that across all divisions or funds that receive any ad valorem property tax.
Okay, so the recreation piece is the only capital piece, and the piece that Bruce identified earlier that we're gonna discuss when we get to the mayor president's budget is a operational piece or some other piece.
Right. Any remaining funds that are unused, that are going back, remaining in the fund, is listed under the council, under that net income number.
Is there a dollar amount in there now?
Yes, sir.
What is that?
11,800 and change. And that is listed under the council's division. And the new fund number for Create is 274. So account number, when you look under your division, under account numbers, you'll see account 274, Fund 274, with the remaining balance of that 11,000 and change. And that's monies not proposed to spend in this budget.
Okay, so there's 11,000 in a council account, a reserve. There's this 200 plus in a recreation account, and there's 500 plus in the mayor's account.
Mike's on.
My mic's on. The 5-something is total, of which 200 and something of that
Okay.
is recreation. Yeah.
So that's the holding point. Okay. So what you're showing in the mayor's office is the total amount collected under this millage. And then the 200 that is in parks come out of that.
Yes.
So there's gonna be another area that's gonna show the 500 minus that as far as a balance sheet. Because 229 of that coming out of the 500 plus that shows in his office.
So we don't budget by fund, we budget by department. So if you look in the revenues, you're going to see the 500. And when we look at the mayor's office, we're going to see the section for Create under there. And you'll see two pieces, which is about half in contractual services and roughly half in this capital item.
So in other words, it's a total of almost 700,000, because if you're doing 5 and you're backing up the 229, where's, no?
5-something.
5, and then you got the 229.
Bruce, what's the number you have in the?
What's,
Switch page,
And
on
then-
page 129.
what's the rest, Mayor President? If you're saying it's 500, and you got 229, where's that other going?
That's in, underneath the president's budget, and
Page
it's
130 in the budget book.
229, half of it is in this park recreation line item, and the other half is falling under?
almost half.
Almost half, and then the other part of it is under your office.
It's in our office, and contractual services right now is the largest account that has, I think, 2-something in it, and then it's, various printing and a couple other, I'd have to look at it.
Okay.
If you go to the top of page 130, you see the whole 542.
Got it. So of this 542, 229 is in recreation.
Right here.
It's in capital outlay,
255.
and we have it listed as for recreational as it relates to
But that's of
Create.
the 542,
Right.
right? Okay. And then the 11 in the council's reserve is also part of the 542.
No.
That's separate.
Over and beyond.
That's above and beyond. So the only thing that comes out of the 542 is the 229 in recreation capital.
Well, it's part of
The
the 542.
181.
It's listed on page 130. So we will revisit this again when we do page 130.
I understand that, but I'm trying to get some clarity on this recreation issue right now based on how there's some consideration for usage. The usage is going to be dependent on the total amount available.
Okay, so the
So I
total.
understand that.
Okay, so the since we don't budget by fund, what we would do is go to the section in the book that says revenues by fund. And I'll walk you through this because it's good to go through this when you're studying the budget. So
What
the
page?
fund number is it's Fund 274. So Fund 274 revenues start on page 99. So that's where you'll see all the money that is collected by that, in that fund, and then you can drill down. In this case, that's the only money that goes into that fund. So on page 99, at the bottom, you see Fund 274, Cultural Economy. That total there, $557,854 is the amount that's expected to be generated from the millage. And there are no other revenue items listed. If you flip the page, you'll see all zeros. So that's the total amount generated by the millage. Now, then there's the expenditure component. There's the amount that we have to pay the assessor. There's an amount that comes.
You could stop right there for now, Laura, because I think we went through that already. That was the number that I was looking for, the 557. So that is the biggest number of all. Of the 557, 200 plus has gone into this capital.
Yep.
Okay. 11 is above and beyond in council. The 181 is for the tax assessor in multiple accounts in multiple places.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. And then when we do get to the executive review, we're going to see a balance of this 557. We're going to see this same number. Of course, some of these will already be placed in other departments, but this is the same number we're going to see that falls underneath his department.
Yes, the money available to spend for CREATE, we will see under his division.
Okay. So now, with that said, Mr. Robidoux, I've heard what you said, and I understand the creativity and how these monies should be spent. And I think that came from the initial consideration and some of the parish needs. I understand that this should be tied to something that would promote tourism and is a generation of additional revenue through that tourism industry. So I would certainly think that whatever, for this, back to our current review, and I think that's what Mr. Castile asked for, and Mr. Bellard, I'm sorry, had asked for, is that I think the appropriate thing to do is for Recreation to provide back to us some of the, I know there's been much planning that has taken place, both in the parish and in the city of Lafayette, which is eligible for these funds, that whatever activity, parks activity that falls into a tourism component, I think a recommendation should come back to us. So what I want to do is ask for wrap-up that, and I'm piggybacking on what Mr. Bellard initially said, is that for wrap-up, I would ask that Recreation provides to the council a list of potential opportunities to expend this money based on the criteria that exist, attracting tourism and generating revenue in the process. And then, and of course, when we say wrap up, if you could have it next week, that's fine, that's even the better. But we requested for wrap up, so that's my wrap up request.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman Boudreaux. Councilman Bellard.
I have just a generic question that ties into all this. How did it, you might, Mr. Robidoux, how does it fall under the president's money? How does that, why couldn't you put the 500-something thousand in the council money? How do we decide that CREATE has to go under the president? And does it have to?
That's how the administration is proposing it in this proposed budget.
And I guess, Mr. Robidoux, where I'm going with this is, I don't want the public to think, okay, it's under you, so it's your money, so let's just say I wanted to take some CREATE money. Well, normally in past budgets, it's under your administration, and it makes it look like, oh, we're trying to grab something from you. This is a totally different thing because it is a property tax, that's the people's money. And I'm just curious, and maybe the other council can chime in, or maybe we can have this discussion at a later date. But it seems to me that we're not having any say-so on the money. You saying it's already going to contractual services, or with that large amount of money, I guess I'm just feeling a little out of the loop to say. And how could we tie it back in to where it doesn't feel that way?
Right. I would argue that it's all y'all's money. It's all taxpayer dollars, and y'all ultimately appropriate all of it. Any part of, whether it's in my budget, whether it's in Senator Boudreau's Parks and Rec budget, y'all can maneuver with via amendments the money where y'all think that it needs to be spent. There was no clear place to put the create money. I thought that it would be the most transparent if it was sitting out there as part of my budget. You'll see when we get to it, and I don't want to jump the gun, that we're not proposing to invest any of that money at this point because we haven't gotten the results from our consultant yet on where the best uses of that money would be. And certainly once we have that, we're going to share that with the council and make those recommendations. And so from a public perception standpoint and for transparency, the place where it would be the most visible is if it was part of my budget. And then ultimately where it ends up, whether it's its own department, which I don't think is a good idea, remains to be seen. But for this budget year, since it was the first year, it just seemed like it would stand out and for discussion if it was in the administration's budget.
And obviously at our first budget hearing, it's standing out. So if that's what, it's working.
I
just, didn't know how the process was, being that, it's not like a subsidiary for a car for one of the people in your department.
Right. It could have just as easily been in the council's budget, but I didn't want to allude to the fact that, oh, hey, it was y'all's idea, and that's why it's for y'all to spend. And so it's in my budget. It's obvious. Everyone can see it, and we'll have, I'm sure, a very robust conversation about the use of
I would
those
like to
funds.
point out, I made the mistake of drawing you here, but it is footnoted in a legend. There was no attempt to tuck it in recreation. It's clearly footnoted that it's create money. I just misspoke.
No,
I
Lori,
apologize. But
we're going to eventually have the conversation of where the money is anyway.
you'll see where we added a legend, and I completely forgot.
I wouldn't have seen your legend, Lori. No, don't worry about that. But the money will stay in, on page 255, it will stay there where it's allocated right now, or does the administration, anyone plan on moving that money?
For right now, it'll stay there. The administration cannot move that money without coming back to the council. Can't take that money and use it for tourism or anything like that. It's stuck in capital.
Okay.
So he can use it for capital as it relates to how it's titled, but he can't use it for anything else.
I got you. And per my request and Councilman Boudreau's request, please give us an update on something, an idea that y'all think, and definitely from the mayor's office, what he thinks, and that way we could, get together and say, okay, yeah, no, and I would rather not see the money just sit there year to year. I'd rather show the people what we can and can't do with their money, unless there's some big project that you want to let it build up to be, but at least let them know what we're building up for it to do and have some public discussion on it. That's just my 2 cents. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Castillo.
Thank you, sir. You said the consultant was working on it, and Mr. Boudreau and Mr. Bellard are asking for, ideas now from the Parks Department. Did the consultant give y'all any ideas yet that we shared with Park and Rec, or was just nothing yet? Because my thing is, they're asking for Parks to come back with something, and the consultant hadn't released anything just yet on which y'all's vision of it, and you can tell we very interested in where this is going to go. So it's kind of it's putting them on a bad spot trying to come up with something. I understand that, and we're looking for something. So I don't know if you want to reach out to the consultant to kind of give us some type of idea where he's heading before this budget's over, to kind of come back to us and say, look, this is something that we we're thinking of.
Yeah, and I agree with that, and we'll definitely do that. And let me make sure that I'm really clear with everyone. The 200 and something that is in capital for recreation, that was the number that I came up with, that I said, you know what, I think recreation's an important part. That we could argue that 400 of the 5-something should be in recreation. We could argue that 100, if depending on the consultant's report, where they think the best investment of those dollars are going to give us the return that we're looking for. You know, I'm open to whatever that is, but I had to come up with some allocation for the budget process, which was going to be long before the consultant when we started the process. And so I said, look, I'd like to give about half of it to recreation because I know there's needs there, and I know there's some really smart strategic investments that we can do in recreation. So let's put the lion's share or a good chunk of it there, and then the rest of it we'll see what the consultants say. And certainly we're going to work with Parks and Rec, and whether that's rails to trail, I mean, those things cost millions of dollars. And they may say, though, that's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck is on some $3.5 million project like that. And if that's the case, then we need to consider going forward, do we allocate more to the capital portion of recreation? But again, until I have the consultant's report, I'm really just kind of just talking in very general terms because I don't know where they're going to come back to us and tell us where the best return on our investment is. And as soon as we have that, we'll certainly share that. But I understand what you're saying as it relates to Parks and Rec. They're saying, okay, we got 200, but is it 200 every year? Is it just this year? You know, and that's where it gets tough, and it changes the types of projects that you can consider.
Yeah, and it kind of puts Gerald and his staff in a bad spot trying to figure out what they would consider as a good project for this, and the consultant not finished with his project, you know, telling us what he thinks would be good. So, you know, I know we want some answers before the budget is up, so if there's some way you can get that information or some information from
Right,
the consultant to kind of share.
Yeah. And so the last thing I'll say is I'm very deliberate in my processes. So if I don't spend the money because I'm waiting for us to come up with the most strategic way to spend the money, then that's what I was willing to propose, to say, hey, we can go and spend it just to spend it, because there's plenty of things we can spend it on. But if we think that we're going to get some really good conversation on where this money should be spent and how much it would cost, then I would come to the council and ask, look, we're not there yet. We're working on it, and for next budget year, we're going to know if we want, you know, a stream of that money for an X number of years, if we're going to spend a portion of it each year. So I'm open to the possibility that it may not be spent this year because it would just fix a few things but not really provide the return on investment that we're looking for. And so then the only other thing is the ballot language limits us also on what we can spend it on. And so so that's also a consideration that we have to factor into whatever conversations we have.
Okay.
Thanks,
All right.
Jane.
Thanks. For all purposes, could you check into it, whether it's next year, this year? I just want a number to cover that basketball court that was just recently done at Judy's Park.
Yeah, we can have that for wrap-up. Just to chime in.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I appreciate Councilman Castile bringing it up. I haven't met with the consultant, so I don't want to be delinquent in providing you all with any information before you finish this process. At this point, I could give you $1 million in capital improvements that are needed in the city right off the cuff. I could probably give you, $750,000 in the parish. But when we look at that create line item, I'll defer to the mayor, and until I get that information, I can't provide you all with anything from the department.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at normal capital, I'm looking at, the 5-year capital program, which this is a total separate category. So, we have a request from 2 council members for us to provide that, and I got to tell you today, I'm not in a position to provide that. I don't have information that would fit the definition of what you all have identified as tourism and all those things today. Now, you know, after I get some more information and I guess get some interaction and some discussions with the consultant, I'll be in a better position. But I could give you just general projects, and I don't think that's what we're looking for. Yours is separate and apart from there.
Right.
But I wanted to make sure you understand, if you ask for something, we'll submit it. But I can't meet that request without any information in my arsenal today.
And I agree. You can find tons of things to put that money to. So I totally agree. I understand the initiative and what the main goal is, so I totally respect that. And I think there's some valuable land in the unincorporated area. We had a discussion the other day about land in Doosan that would be ideal for an RV park, a return on investment, culture, tourism, a pond. There's so much opportunities, and it's good to know that. But yes, if we spend this money every year, you'll never have the opportunity to meet the goal of what Create was designed to do, which is bigger projects, long-term, bigger impact in the community. So I get it. So my request about the basketball roof over it, that is maybe pie in the sky for me, but I would like to know what it looks like. And if it's a very minute cost to do something like that, at that time I would refer to the council members and get discussion on stuff like that. But
We have that information, and I would put that in the normal capital category, which would probably lead me, because part of that strategic discussion has to do with our entire look at those parish parks, those that are outside the city. If you look in the 105 account today, that's before you, we have $25,000 for upkeep and maintenance of those 9 parks Mr. Terrio asked about.
right.
You know, we can't get it done without any funds.
Correct.
So when we talk about what we're going to do, and as you said at the last meeting, we talked about the Doosan Park development and what are some of the things. So we got to have a long discussion about where we're going with those parks that we own and not able to maintain or upgrade. And we have programs going on at all those facilities today.
And we have to have the serious discussion about funding and
Yes.
who's paying for what and where's the majority of the money going and why do we only have 25,000 allocated, you know, for those unincorporated area parks, you know. So I'm all about discussing parks and recreation. I'm a strong believer in it. I think if we don't do something, then there's more kids in the street. There's more kids that are committing crimes where, you know, I believe Parish recreation, I mean, there's so many people saying sell the parks, but, you know, you can't, in my opinion, you don't want to do that and you can't do that. If anything, you want to invest in your parks and recreation and make it stronger so we keep kids and children actively in sports, whether it's baseball, golf, softball, and then pickleball for when I get older, whatever. But at the end of the day, I understand. I understand exactly where you're coming from when you say there's only $25,000, you know, allocated or improvements in those areas. But we have to have the discussion of how do we get where we truly have funding to make those improvements for those people that participate in those unincorporated areas. You know, how long have you been here, Mr. Boudreaux?
He said we'll make 35 years.
Gotro?
Been a while.
Okay. I can't even imagine trying to fix this if you guys were not here. And it's very important people understand how important it is that you have resources and you have a history and you have knowledge of what's going on. And my hopes is that somehow between now and the time that you guys go off into your next chapter, that we can have those discussions and try to fix parks and recreation as a whole. Because the way I see it, it's hard to help the Judices, the Scotts, the Karen Crows, those Arsenal parks, the parks, and you know, it's hard to help those in the unincorporated area when, at the end of the day, you only have the city folks paying a millage, you know. So I know that's been a discussion, and I don't want to get long-winded because we got a lot to do. But thank you for your service, and I definitely want to have those discussions. And I'm willing to meet with anybody and talk about what's the future goal for this fund that we just found. But pie in the sky for me, any little small amount that can make an improvement in those areas, be interested in.
Okay.
Councilman Boudreaux.
Thank you very much. Back to 255 in this particular fund. So Jay, I just wanted to share with you, I think it's great that we involve the consultant, and that's a great idea, and obviously, Parks Director Boudreaux feels the same way. What I don't want to get lost, and this is also for Mr. Robideau, I have some ideas already. I'm just, out of respect, I'm gonna meet with the department, I'm gonna meet with the administrator, but for instance, you got Clark Field. Ever since the investment of Parks and Recreation and the Kiwanis Club into Clark Field, and it became multi-purpose and the surface could be used at any time regardless of the weather, there are a number of entertainment events that have taken place there. Everything from church events, large church gatherings, concerts. There's a big Mardi Gras event there. So that's what I mean when I say, when I ask the department to just think about it, and we're gonna have to be a little creative with create. Acadiana Park Campground. We have a lot of people who do go there locally, but we get a lot of folks traveling into town doing festivals. In the campground, we haven't had the ability to give some of the attention and upgrades needed as far as some of the concerns that have been back there in that area. So I am totally on board. I think it needs to be a big old group plan. But within that big old group plan, I don't want to lose an opportunity on a few things that year after year after year, we just have not been able to get to. So the campground, I see it as a tourism, because the majority of the people who come in there are coming in to our town. And again, it's heavily used. It's back there in the back of Acadiana Park. Beautiful site tied to the nature station. And just last year, we did a huge initiative as it relates to Hyman Park, but that may get us up to phase one. So with the Vermilionville tie and creating festival activity there and tying into Paul Bro, the other historical property there, and what Macomb Vise is doing. So I could tell you, I got 3 things that I think at least could get on the radar and see if it fit. And there's some recreation facilities, there's some tourist activity, they address some culture needs. They promote the food, the music. So I just want to make sure that as we look at it from the big picture perspective, that we don't lose some of the small stuff. So if y'all need ideas, I'm available. I'd be more than willing to talk to y'all, but that's just 3 off of the top of my head, just for this purpose and what we got to meet in the language, like you say, as it relates to the ballot information that went out there. So we'll talk more about that, but I just want to share. But thank you for bringing the consultant into the loop as well, Mr. Castillo.
Okay. Councilman Castillo. Oh, okay. Good discussion. I mean, this is very important, I think, for everyone to understand. 262, right? Yeah. 262. Okay. Okay, I'm not seeing anything.